The morning of the meeting, I couldn't focus. My hand shook slightly as I tied my tie, rehearsing greetings and polite conversation in my head. I had asked Clara to dress modestly, something simple, elegant, respectful. It wasn't about control. It was about showing the people who raised me the respect they deserved. When she rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath about how outdated my family is, I brushed it off as nerves. But something in the tone lingered, a tiny ember of unease I tried not to notice. Clara walked through the door wearing a dress that hugged every curve, short enough to make my stomach twist. Her hair fell perfectly, cascading over one shoulder, and she smiled at me a little too knowingly, like she was testing me. My jaw tightened. "Clara," I said modestly. I whispered, keeping my voice low. "Oh, come on," she replied, smirking. "Your parents aren't going to care that much." That smirk, the casual disregard, stung more than I expected, but I forced a smile and led her to the car. The drive to my parents' house was quiet, the air heavy with something I couldn't yet name. I tried to focus on the route, on the familiar trees and streets, but every glance at her in the passenger seat tightened the knot in my chest. My parents were waiting on the porch, their faces lighting up when they saw me, and then falling into polite surprise at Clara's appearance. My mother's eyes flicked from her dress to mine, a subtle raise of the brow that didn't escape me. "You look different," my father said carefully, and for a moment I felt a twinge of pride, like he noticed I had brought someone special. But the unease simmered. Clara greeted them with a bright, rehearsed smile, leaning in just slightly too close to my father when she shook his hand. My mother's mouth tightened, a subtle exhale that spoke volumes. They made small talk, asked polite questions, and I forced myself to smile, nod, interject. But I couldn't shake the feeling that every move she made was designed to provoke, to unsettle, to test the waters. Dinner was a blur. Clara laughed at jokes too loudly, touched my arm more than necessary, and kept checking her phone under the table. I caught glimpses of messages flashing on the screen, some with hearts, some with inside jokes I didn't recognize. A small voice in my head whispered, "This isn't right." I dismissed it, thinking I was being paranoid, imagining things where there were none. Later, while helping clear the dishes, my mother pulled me aside. "David, are you happy with her?" she asked, her eyes searching mine with quiet intensity that made my stomach drop. "Of course," I said quickly, a little too defensively. "Why do you ask?" She hesitated, then whispered, I've seen the way she looks at other men sometimes. Watch closely." I wanted to laugh it off, to tell her she was overthinking. But that night, after returning home, the gnawing doubt refused to leave. I checked her phone when she stepped into the shower, something I swore I'd never do. But I couldn't ignore the trail of messages, flirty and intimate, with someone named Eric. Panic surged, followed by denial. Maybe it was nothing, a harmless joke, I told myself. But then came the weekend, and Clara needed space for a girls' night. She promised she'd be home early, but when I called, she didn't answer. The messages I found next morning confirmed what I had feared. Secret dinners, late-night calls, moments stolen behind my back. The woman I had trusted, loved, and imagined building a life would have been betraying me quietly, meticulously. The confrontation was brutal. I could barely breathe as I held the phone in my hands, shaking. "Why?" I whispered, not loud enough for her to hear it first. She looked at me, eyes wide, as if caught in the act, then tilted her head, almost mockingly. "It just happened," she said softly, her voice so calm it made my blood boil. I left her apartment that night and drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring into streaks as tears I hadn't felt coming poured down my face. When I finally returned home, I called my parents, voice thick. "Mom, Dad," I broke, unable to finish. There was silence. Then my mother said, softly but firmly, "David, sometimes the truth hurts, but it frees you too. You'll see." I hung up, the weight of betrayal pressing down, but also a strange relief settling in. Their words didn't erase the pain, but they reminded me that the heartbreak wasn't the end. It was a turning point. I realized that trusting my instincts, honoring my own worth, mattered more than holding on to someone who had quietly slipped away from my life while pretending to stay. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't need closure from her anymore. I had closure in knowing I deserved better, in knowing that love without trust is just a shadow of itself. And as I walked out the door, I felt a flicker of hope, a fragile, precious ember, that life, though painfully honest, could still be beautiful.